Yeah, and if Dustin, do you mind talking just a little bit about Tom Slick character?
Mhm. Yeah.
People don't have any idea who Tom. Some people do, some people don't. But yeah, like if you don't mind, just a little bit about that guy.
Yeah, so Tom Slick is a central character in the origin story of Bigfoot. So he was a millionaire oil man from Texas. So he had a lot of eccentric interests, and one of those being he was big into mine science. He's kind of a leader in that industry in the 1950s, and then he also became really fixated with the abominable snowman. So he oversaw or he sponsored three expeditions in the Himalaya in 1957, 58, and 59. He actually participated in the first one with Peter Byrne. That was their first reconnaissance. And then around 1958 is when he heard about what was going on in Bluff Creeks. So then he shifted his operations to the Pacific Northwest, and he had the North American expeditions from the fall of 59 to the fall of 62. And again, there was two separate expeditions. There's a Pacific Northwest expedition, which was had their base camp there in Louse Camp, right in the heart of Bluff Creek, and then they also had the British Columbia expedition in the Great Bear of British Columbia along the BC coast. And tragically, he died in a plane crash in 1962, which kind of ushered in what John Green called the quiet years, 1962 to 1967, which not much happened. And another thing that really another event that occurred that led to that quiet period is in 1960. Sir Edmund Hillary, the conqueror of Everest, he had a
which they named the Hillary Step after him, I believe, right?
Yeah, he conquered Everest. It's probably perhaps the most famous man in the world at the time. So he had a Yeti, much publicized Yeti expedition in 1960. And he was actually a believer in the Yeti. And when he came back, he concluded that it was a myth, and it was broadcast across the world in newspapers, Life magazine, New York Times. So it was really the death knell for the Yeti's popularity, and it also had an effect in North America as far as the Sasquatch, so in the Bigfoot. So there's a few years period, that kind of a 3-4 year period where not a lot of occurred in North America.
When you were writing about Tom Slick, were you able to see like any letters or anything from or to about him?
Yeah, well, one thing I really liked about the book is one particular episode, and no one's ever written about, not even Lauren Coleman. He just gives a pass reference to it, is the British Columbia expedition. That was oversaw by Bob Titmus, and John Green participated. Renee Denhenen did not take part of it because Bob Titmus hated his guts and refused to allow him to be a part of the expedition. And so I have all the letters written between Bob Titmus and Tom Slick during that period. So they're in Tom Slick's collection, which is stored at the University of Texas at San Antonio. So it's probably 50, 60 letters that he sent to kind of give him the whole lowdown on what occurred up in British Columbia during that time. It's some fascinating stuff. And the interesting thing is that according to Peter Byrne's books, which are not a paragon of accuracy, he claims that so I should back up a little bit. Originally, the leader of the Pacific Northwest expedition was Bob Titmus. Things weren't going good. So then Tom Slick brought in Peter Byrne from the Himalaya. He took over. Bob Titmus left because they hated each other. And then he went to north to run the British Columbia expedition. So yeah, and Peter Byrne's book, he said that after Bob Titmus left the Pacific Northwest expedition, they never heard from him again, which is absolutely not true. So he was probably even as close, if not closer, to Tom Slick than Peter Byrne was. So their relationship continued up to the time that Tom Slick died in October of 1962. So that British Columbia expedition would have went on for years. Actually, he just loaned him money to buy a new boat to continue to cruise through the Great Bear. So it would have went on for years to come, but tragically, Tom Slick didn't make it. He died at just 46 years old, which is the exact same age his dad was when he died.
all these like influential people in any kind of walk of life have died in a plane crash at some time or another, like Jim Croce, Leonard Skinner.
Yeah, the same plane as Buddy Holly and died in. Yeah. Those planes are dangerous, really dangerous back then. I should take this time now. We're talking about Tom Slick. Jeremiah, when I did his podcast, he posed this question to me. He said, "What was there some area that you looked into that you were just kind of frustrated and you threw up your hands, you can never figure it out?" And I didn't think of it at that time, but now, yeah, there absolutely is one, and that is I was just maybe not as obsessive I am to find out who wrote Mrs. Bigfoot as film, but I was really gung-ho to figure out if Tom Slick and Peter Byrne were actually, I just want to find proof that they were working with the CIA, which they absolutely 100% were. But I don't know why Peter Byrne at 97 years old, why he can't admit it. So it sounds far.
No, he can't admit it.
So I'm not saying that the Slick expeditions in the Himalaya were a front. They were legitimately there to find the Yeti. There's no way the CIA, somebody's gonna get permission to operate just right on the border of Red China and not be working with the CIA.
No,
impossible.
No, what I want to ask you, why do you think Slick and Peter Byrne were working with the CIA?
Well, there's evidence that Tom Slick had connections with the CIA. He had worked with the CIA in the past. So at the time, this is in the throes of the Cold War. So there's a lot of people who were working with the CIA. Literally thousands of people were working with the CIA. So actually, I believe it was 2008, they released the names of thousands of people who were working for the CIA.
Was it kind of the era? Because I like the movie American Made with Tom Cruise, and it was about Barry Seal.
Oh yeah.
Was it kind of in that time era too? Or?
No, this is not. This is the late 1950s.
Okay.
So in Tibet, so they were operating. The Himalayas right on the border of Nepal and Tibet to the north, which was essentially invaded by Mao and the Red China in the 1950s, who took over. So that ended up becoming a hotbed for like espionage during the Cold War. So it was really so any kind of mountaineer that had. A lot of mountaineers at that time were working for the CIA. Actually, we know for a fact that a lot of those people who were associated with Tom Slick, like, were in fact working for the CIA. So it's very, I'd say it's almost a 100% that they were working for the CIA in some capacity. I'm not sure they were getting paid. As again, I don't believe it was a front, but they were certainly approached by the CIA to keep their eyes open. It just doesn't make any sense why. He would never. I had Daniel Perez said he was corresponding with Peter Byrne. This was probably like 6 months ago. I said, "Hey, Daniel, we just ask him point blank, yes or no. Were you and Tom Slick working with the CIA?" And he gave a non-answer. So how would Peter Byrne? Okay, I mean, I get that maybe like sure, Tom Slick had connection to the CIA. But then how would Peter Byrne get involved with that if he had no connections other than they were working. It was Tom Slick was overseeing. I mean, he physically participated in the first expedition, was essentially a recon for like 4 weeks. But the biggest expedition was in 1958, so he didn't participate in that. But yeah. So they certainly would have been approached by the CIA, and
so weird.
Yeah.
Maybe Bob.
It sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it really isn't. I mean, a lot of people. It wasn't uncommon to be on not necessarily the payroll of the CIA, but be working with the CIA or cooperating with them in some capacity.
Now, yeah, you said Cold War. Now, when I think about Barry Seal, that was after the Cold War kind of thing. I think
that was like in the 80s.
Yeah. So, but still, it makes me wonder. Like, what if Bob and Roger were working for the CIA or something? Get footage of Bigfoot.
Well, Lauren Coleman was convinced that Peter Byrne played a role in getting the Dalai Lama's escape from Tibet in the 1950s. Don't you laughing? And, but actually, Peter Byrne actually did address that. He explicitly denied that, but he would never give a straight answer about the CIA. I don't know why he would stay silent. Or maybe he didn't know. Maybe it was just Tom Slick that was involved. I don't know.
Tell you why. Because you worked for the CIA. That's why.
Well, every time we talk about Bigfoot, it's got to have, you get the CIA always gets connected with the conversation.
To cover. Hey, so that's it. Your favorite? One of your favorite? You mentioned earlier one of your favorite characters was Renee.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's I have to agree with you on that. I can see the angry guy, but he never started out being angry. He started out being you talk about having a rough childhood,
Mm-hmm.
basically being adopted and then working for people. Then the first chance he got to leave, he took it, and he traveled around, and the bitterness kind of came with I guess as with progress. But I wanted to ask you this one too. You could expand more on Renee, but you used to tell me this story about somebody getting left behind and somebody willing to shoot somebody. Yeah, if you could talk about that one, that'd be good.
Yeah, so I know for a fact I'm the first person to write about this, but I wasn't the first person to go public with it. That'd been Thomas Steenberg. So when a few years ago, I interviewed Keith Chiazzari, who was the pilot who flew Renee and John Green, the dog, and another individual up to Blue Creek Mountain in the summer of 1967. And over the course of interviewing him, he mentioned something about Dehennon threatening Green with a gun. I was like, oh wait, whoa, hold up, what happened? He was kind of hesitant to tell the story, but finally came around. And he said, "Yeah, I don't know the exact details of how it occurred, but somehow Renee got stranded, and it was late, essentially it was, I think it was Labor Day weekend. It was the temperature was over 100 degrees. He got stranded for a whole day." And apparently, when they came back and they found him, he was furious and he pointed his shotgun, like you actually see in the famous tracking dog footage from that time. You can see the shotgun is actually over Keith Chiazzari's shoulder. A lot of people incorrectly point that out as being Bob Tippins. It's not. It's Keith Chiazzari. Anyway, yeah, he threatened to kill John Green, and John Green would never. And then actually, well, let me back up. And then after I heard that story, I call Thomas Steenberg. I say, "Hey, have you heard of this story?" And Thomas Steenberg kind of chuckled. He said, "Yeah, John Green told me that same story. He said he would never tell it until after Renee had died." So they had several falling outs, and that was just one of them. But yeah, surprisingly, they continued to have a relationship after that. It wasn't until like the early 70s when they really had their final breakup. And when I say breakup, they no longer worked together. They still saw each other. They were still civil. Well, not always civil. It got nasty towards the end, but yeah, that was a big episode.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
No, that's funny.
Yeah,
Dude.
so
It sounds just like the crazy people looking for Bigfoot today. You got all these people that they don't have much in common other than that they are out there kind of looking for Bigfoot, right?
Well, that's hilarious to
They
think
probably
about.
wouldn't be friends with otherwise, and there's all this tension you hear and all these stories from camp, and it's kind of funny. Like same as it ever was, I guess.
Yeah, to me the whole relationship of John Green and Renee Dehennon is hilarious because I mean you couldn't ask for an odder couple than John Green and Renee Dehennon. They were just polar opposites in every conceivable way. So I'm not sure how they coexisted for as long as they did. They did. So
it's like one of those opposites attract type deals,
I suppose. Yeah, and Renee Dehennon is probably in the two books, probably he's the individual I write about the most. So the reason my storyline ends in 1979 is that's essentially the year that he gave up on all the legal squabbles he had with Patterson's wife and every film company in the world that Patterson had worked with. So ultimately, Renee Dehennon acquired the rights to the film. To this day, his two sons own the film along with Roger Patterson's widow, Patty Patterson. He also owns Roger Patterson's book. So throughout the end of the 1970s, that was really the goal of Renee Dehennon. He kind of gave up on being the guy who found Bigfoot. I think he felt like that was the best we were ever going to get was the Patterson film. So he became obsessed with kind of securing the legacy of the film and Roger Patterson, and ultimately he was successful.
So I guess I got to be honest here. I think I kind of don't like all you guys. I hate all you, just like everybody hated each other back then. So
yeah, well, thank you
we're
for
beefing
sharing
it, dude. We're beefing it like Green into Hinden.
Yeah.
Shotgun.
Going back to Renee, I heard that in Harry and the Hendersons, that was a cool movie. That the main character, the guy with the French accent, was supposed to be.
What's his name?
Guy Lafleur.
Yeah.
There you go. Nice.
Was that?
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I saw some newspaper article where they asked him what he thought of the movie, and he said, "I thought it was cute." That was his response.
There was two guys in the film. There was the hunter guy, and then there was like the museum owner guy. So is it the museum owner you guys are kind of basing it off Renee DeHinden, right? Is that who you're speaking of?
No, the French hunter, the obsessed hunter.
Dang it.
So it's the classic story of Captain Ahab and Moby Dick, and the Renee DeHinden's White Whale was the Sasquatch. He was obsessed.
It's funny. I think because Jonathan and I, for a long time, we might pick it up later on, but we've been talking about like doing this actual film about what happened in Bluff Creek on 67, and we were like, we want to feature some people, some characters, and one of them would be Renee DeHinden. We were like, who could play Renee DeHinden? And then we were thinking like
the most challenging character to portray.
But we thought of the person who could do the perfect Renee DeHinden, and it's Rainn Wilson from The Office. And we were like, dude, Rainn Wilson can do a great Renee DeHinden, in my opinion. I think he really could pull it off.
Maybe.
It'd be so funny.
Yeah, I thought I'd just jump in this because I always like to bring up some of the past history between the players here. And I remember first meeting Dustin. Do you remember the meeting?
It was at Lyle's camp, wasn't it? July 2016.
I was there. Yeah. I was at that one.
Yeah,
too.
I remember the first person I met when I pulled up. The first person I talked to was Tate. And I remember Rowdy came up to me, and then at some time I saw you as well. I
probably had like 2 beers in each.
Your first impression of the Bluff Creek Project was Tate.
I'm afraid so.
Yeah.
Dustin's like, I don't know why I'm here.
What I was pretty impressed with is that when you said, I watched all your videos, there's like 72 of them, and you're one of the very few people who have watched all those and followed up on it and could pass the quiz if we asked you about what the videos were about. So it's pretty cool. And you managed to become a member, and I look at you as being one of the big historians of the group. Because if there's anything historical, I go to Dustin to ask questions, and I have Steve to ask questions as well. So it's kind of cool.
It's instead of Ask Jeeves, it's Ask Steven, Ask Dustin.
Yeah, I'm so jealous that I couldn't have been a part of the rediscovering the film site. That must have been a blast.
Hey, get in line, man.
And you guys I've been complaining for years about this. But you guys have all that footage. You can make a really excellent, little 2-hour documentary out of that. I know a good film editor too.
Because we still have it. I mean, I still have it on USB stashed someplace, and yeah.
Just send it to me. Send it to me.
It's only the good
those were all really good. Those were all really cool to see. I like when they're just sitting around arguing about like a stump.
No, I think it's this stump. Cool. Steven, it's that stump. No, I can't even do a good impression of Ian. I'm trying. Kind of a very deep. It almost sounds like a nasally deep voice. It's like, I think it's over there.
Speaking the film
totally
side,
off
I was.
topic,
go ahead.
The guy that looked for Bigfoot on Harry and the Hendersons was Jacques Lafleur.
Jacques Lafleur. That's so good. It's funny. Dustin was the second to the last person in the Bluff Creek Project because I was a year before him, and then he was a year after. And so that was pretty fun. And then, it was even cool. I think I annoyed him with it because he's like, yeah, I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, or whatever, and I'm like, dude, I'm from Kansas City, Missouri.
No, I'm from St. Louis. I'm from the other side.
Why don't you?
Well, from Missouri though.
Why don't you just quiet there?
Hey, Dustin, everybody has kind of a weird story from their own personal little weird story from up in that Bluff Creek area. Everyone from Steven to Robert to Jamie. I mean, everybody has experienced something a little strange.
I'm right here too. Thank you.
Yeah, Tate too. You ever have anything strange happen?
The thing I experienced was Tate sleeping with his car engine on night.
We don't need to talk about that.
You can't put them enough. It's not strange anymore. It's a routine.
Me sleeping with the car engine on because it's cold, and me asking to borrow some gas from people in the morning.
And then him pitching his tent underneath that Widowmaker tree.
Dude, I will never sleep under that Widowmaker tree ever. Still to this day, it scares the crap out of me. Car or tent.
Then while we're throwing stones, to Tate, we can't forget to mention the immortalized location at the cell site, aka.
I don't know what you're talking about for that one. It just doesn't.
Otherwise known as the
cell site.
Cell site.
The cell site. It's a good. Oh.
Hey, speaking of Bluff Creek, I'm pleasantly surprised. I mean, Robert and I talked about this on the phone a couple of days ago. It really looks like the fire didn't impact our area too much, which is wonderful news. Especially, I was really scared that Louse Camp was going to burn down.
Dude.
As I always said, I kind of want it. I kind of secretly want. I guess it's not so much secret now that I kind of
whoa. Not Louse Camp, right? The film site, though.
Oh, let him finish.
No, I actually wanted the film site to burn down because I wanted that's our opportunity to make it look like what's behind your head.
I thought you were saying Louse Camp for some reason in my mind. Okay, no, you're right. Yeah, no. Sorry.
No, I want Louse Camp to remain pristine, but I definitely want the film site to burn down because I want us to take out all those saplings. I want us to get a tiller out there and get that sand back, and I want to make it look. I want to like bring up the tree and have the downfallen tree there. I want to make it look exactly like 67.
To be honest with you, I'm selfishly in the same boat with you on that one because I'm like. I think I've been telling Robert, and like, why don't you guys just clear a lot of the trees? And I'm like, oh, we can't because if the Forest Service catches us cutting trees down, it's a big, it's a big no-no.
As exciting as to take people up there and go there, it is anticlimactic when you get there because it looks nothing alike. So it'd be so amazing if we could just make it look like what's behind you there.
Maybe
that's our opportunity.
Maybe we should. What do you have to do to you have to get a petition or whatever? People sign things to allow you to do something like that.
I think you can sign all the petitions you want. You know, there's a policy one goes by, and that's repairing environment. So you can just kiss that one goodbye.
Yeah,
altering of it, repairing environments. But if nature has his hand on things, and the fire happens to reach that area, happens to do that. You know, burning the underbrush, a good fire is designed to burn the underbrush out and keep the trees healthy and the ground taken care of and nutrients put back in. But deep down inside, Dustin, I feel the same way. It's like so often you are expecting to see that open area with the logs and the artifacts in place, and you get there, they're not. It's almost like a big letdown. It's like, oh, this ain't it.
But they come around when they talk with you, and you get your little map out and you point out all the markers like the big tree, and then slowly they can kind of visualize it. Then that it becomes exciting at that point.
You know, there comes this moment where all of a sudden it just clicks and you see the whole sandbar. Mm-hmm. Like if there's no trees there, it's pretty cool.
It's so wild, and you know I know. Jonathan, you've camped at the film set a couple times. I've only camped there once. I think Robert a couple times too. I don't know if you have yet, Dustin. But I mean, I don't know. I got a question for all you, and then I'll explain why. But or not why, but so in my opinion, I think we earlier on discussed that Louse Camp is just creepy in general. There's this vibe about it there that's just really creepy, and it's a place you can drive to and camp in your car if you wanted to, but it's still creepy. But when I camped at the film site, I found it not creepy for some weird reason, even though it's like where the film took place and you have to hike into that spot. I didn't find it as creepy as camping at Louse Camp. I mean, Jonathan,
I agree, and I think I think the reason I find you still have a lot of old growth firs in Louse Camp. You have mostly saplings. You do have the one big tree on your right shoulder that still survived, and there used to be some massive firs out there. You can see the stumps that they apparently took out the salvage logging after the '64 flood. But yeah, you don't have a lot of the big. It's mostly just these little saplings and yeah. So for me, I like that ambiance of these, this primeval forest, these massive conifer trees. That always, always gives me the willies.
It's just a place there's so many stories about things weird happening there, but you don't really hear anything weird about the film site. I mean, what do you think, Robert or Jonathan?
Well,
I just think
Jonathan, go ahead and go first.
Oh, I just think that there's a lot of like these like young trees all growing around you. And another thing is like you try to walk through those trees, it's really loud. You get a better sense of safety kind of because you feel like something's not going to sneak up on you as easy. Also, it's really loud because of the creek. So your ears are kind of listening to only your immediate surrounding, not your long distance hearing. So I don't know. For me, that's maybe why. Louse Camp, you can like peer into the darkness for a long ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll jump on that too. I've had weird stuff happen to me down at the berm or down by the water, downstream from the film site. So, but at the film site itself, I find a nice, warm, fuzzy, cozy, relaxing place there, and I don't ever feel like I'm being watched or evil stuff hanging around besides me. But
I feel safer there. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say the same downstream or down by the berm where I spent enough time. But there's other places that are a little intimidating, but never on the film site have I felt that way. I feel like it's sanctuary. It's a safe place.
It's so weird. And there's like bears and mountain lions that walk through there every day and every night. And
Yep.
Jonathan, you got to tell the story because I can't tell it as good as you do sometimes. But it was my first time camping there. And we were like right by the very like kind of the edge of Bluff Creek of the film site. And
we kind of split a tent.
We're sleeping on the incline. You and I are sleeping kind of downhill.
It was a decline, yeah. So like my head was up and it was like the middle of the night and I got acid reflux and stood up like choking.
I freaked out.
Like, is it a bear? What is that? And I couldn't tell him like, oh, it's just acid reflux as I was choking. But anyway, yeah,
so
took some
Well,
antacids.
to put it back in the historical context, people today would probably wonder, well, why is this Bluff Creek? Why is this the area? Why was this the epicenter of Bigfoot country? Well, I already alluded to this, earlier in the podcast, is that in the 1950s, after in the post-war years, that was really the final frontier in the lower 48. There was no wilder area in the country. Perhaps the Florida Everglades is probably ranks up there with it, where Tate lives currently. But yeah, Bluff Creek was it. Yeah, you're not a fan of Florida, I know. They got the skunk ape down there, correct? Yeah, okay.
That's all their response is going to be.
Like that Humboldt area is still like super desolate.
Yeah,
so
yeah, still definitely.
I can't imagine back then it was obviously more desolate. So
yeah, and you
drive for a couple hours and don't see absolutely anything.
Well, just put yourself in the 1950s when they first start punching that road in there. I mean, that was all just virgin primeval. Timber up there is almost like the redwoods did extend into the Blue Creek watershed. So yeah, it was a very primeval area. So if there could ever be an ideal location for like a Hollywood monster movie featuring Bigfoot, it definitely would have been Bluff Creek in the 1950s.
That's why I am honestly shocked to this day that like nobody in Hollywood has wanted to do what do you call it?
It sounds like the best movie ever made.
Exactly.
Like.
Why doesn't
Like
Hollywood
story,
like
the
make a
characters and the time frame and just everything that went on with it? It was like this. You got the natives and the just this. It was too cool of a moment, too big of characters. I don't know how it's not like some big Hollywood film, but it's all in this. It's all in Dustin's book. He's got it.
Yep.
I really did like Willow Creek. That's one I feel like, yeah, I agree 99.9% of the Bigfoot movies out there are trash, but I really enjoyed Willow Creek. It's a little bit of a rip-off of Blair Witch Project, but
so
I enjoyed it nonetheless.
Blair Witch, yeah. Robert and I interviewed Bryce about the movie Willow Creek. It's obviously one of my favorite. It's one of my top 3 favorite Bigfoot movies. And I think I interviewed Eduardo Sanchez too, which made another one of my top 3 favorite Bigfoot movies exists.
Yeah, and explain who Sanchez is.
So Eduardo Sanchez is the co-director actually of the movie Blair Witch Project.
And that was a brilliant idea he came up. Of course, now it's been it's a little bit saturated that idea now, but it was original at the time. So yeah, that was pretty brilliant on his part.
They were the kind
Found
of the
footage.
Yeah, they were the originators of that idea. And then you got like Cloverfield, which is a popular J.J. Abrams movie. And then, then it snowballs from there. And then Bobcat Goldthwait came in and made Willow Creek, which I think for, people who are fans of Bluff Creek like us, I think we really dig the movie. The ending part wasn't my favorite. I thought that was kind of weird.
Well, for people who don't know, people who are listening or familiar with the movie, you recall the tent scene that was actually in Laos camp, and the guy making the Bigfoot noises that wasn't a real Bigfoot. It was actually Robert Leiterman. Tell us about that story, Robert.
Yeah. Well, it's always because we were up there. It was 2012. We had just gone up there with Bill Munns and showed him what the film site was, and Bubba was up there, Cliff was up there, Perez was up there. And so we were there for like 4 days, and we headed back. We're back in Willow Creek, back at the bar, kicking back. My son's over at Steve's house plugging up his toilet, but we're just kicking back at the bar. And I kept hearing this guy making weird noises over there, and I was with Ian. And finally, I didn't know who that guy was. So this cute brunette comes over, and she's looking for extras for their movie they're filming. So they need somebody to sit in the bar and just pretend like you really adore this guy playing the ukulele. He's going to be standing on a table. And like, okay, we're in. So after that, we're just kicking back. And eventually the word got back to me that they were looking for a place to film the rest of the movie. The Bigfoot movie that they're working on. So basically Terry and Todd suckered me into that one. That's how I got stuck with it. But anyhow, so we loaded the car up, and the next day it was Ian. He had his car. I had my son Francis with us. We went back. We led the film crew, all 7 of them, back into a Laos camp because they're looking for a place that had this vibe and everything. Go, hey, I know just the place. So when they first got there, they sat around the fireplace, and we threw wood. We burned that for a few hours, and finally go, what are you guys going to do? I mean, when are you guys going to get started? They go, wait for the night scene. I go, well, how are you going to do that? So they had no idea about calls, and I got elected to do the calls because I actually had a decent one. And the Bobcat had something that wasn't quite recognizable by Bigfoot, but it's in the movie, so he still used it anyway. But and after that, I taught one of the guys had to knock on a piece of wood for Knox, so he did a good job with that. And then the first scene they filmed while there was the tent scene. So
was that your hand? I can't remember. Was that your hand or not?
No, that was Bobcat's hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I told him I've got an earpiece. I can talk to Bobcat, and the guy doing the sound can make it so we're not going to be heard in the movie. It's magic on how it works. So I said, push on the tent. So so he puts his hand on the tent and push it in. I said, just do that till somebody screams. That was a good part of the scene. And then breaking branches and toss them at the tent, breathing, making noise and calls. That was all part of the fun. And the neat thing is credit to the 2 actors. They didn't have a plan in front of them. They had no idea what we were going to do. Neither do we, and so we did whatever. And then the last part of it, I had to walk up that road, 12 and 10 by myself in the dark. after we trying to scare people all the way up there and do a few more calls at the very end. Then after that, I had to make my way back down the hilltop, back down to where the camp was when they said it was done. But I've been on that road numerous times doing the same thing, except usually I'm not by myself.
It's a great movie. I love the movie. And I thought Steven Strouper did a great job too. Actually, when I first watched it, I thought he was an actor. I didn't know he was. So
well,
Steven's part was really cool on that.
I don't think he was. I think he was acting. I think they said, "Hey, just you guys, just talk to these people."
Every
Apparently
time
they just told him. He told me they just told him, just go on with your story, do it the way you'd want to do it, kind of keep it a little creepy. And he was like, "Okay."
I was gonna say Steven was not acting in that film. He was being himself. And we can't forget about a friend of ours, Tom Yemarone, who was actually outside. No, it was actually before I met Robert and Rowdy. The first people I met in Bluff Creek, Bigfoot related, was Cliff and Bobo. And you guys know Terry Smith and Tom Yemarone. Those are the first 4 guys I ran into.
I still love. Oh, I gotta interject, Jonathan. You still got to learn that song. Roger and Bob
wrote out that day.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
Somebody's got to play it on the guitar around the fire camp at Laos Camp.
Dude, we got to, and because Tom Yemarone actually played that in the movie Willow Creek. He did the song.
I love that song. It's on my Bigfoot playlist every time I go to the Bluff Creek.
Yeah, you have to play it, and it's like one of those things. Like, man,
it's a great song and a very thorough history.
Yes,
and I think Robert, you told me a funny story about the guy in the Prius that played like the tough guy.
Yeah.
And no, correct me if I'm wrong, but where that shot was filmed was at the 50-gate bridge, kind of in that like little that little circle area where the old road is and where it goes down. And is that where Jerry Crew and them had the logging equipment? Was that spot?
I vaguely think that's the place where the barrel routine was and a few other things close to the area there.
Yeah. We don't know exactly.
I guess that debate goes on.
We were there, Dustin, right? You and I were Tate as well.
Jamie thinks it
was
years there.
ago. So. And Jamie was telling us about it, like right at the part where the machinery or whatever got thrown into the creek.
Yeah, we don't know exactly where Jerry Crew's tracks were found and where he made the first question you have to ask here when you refer to the Jerry Crew tracks, you're referring to ones that he first saw in August of 1958, or are you referring to ones on October 2nd that he actually cast and ended up being shown on the front page?
I was more referencing the equipment thrown into the creek.
Yeah, that was definitely Notice Creek Bridge. But
so the tracks that he casted, do you guys know where that was exactly? It
had to be within a couple miles of Laos Camp. I mean, that's where they were working at the time, so it was very close.
What I have in my video was Jamie said that he talked to Jay Rowland, and Jay Rowland told him that the casts were they were cast. He said 150 feet from. He made some reference like from here to the subway, and then Jamie measured it out like 150 feet. So that's where he took us. That's where he thinks.
Well, in the book, Steve Mathis, he was a member of the Pacific Northwest expedition with the Byrne brothers in 1960, or actually I think it was 1961. And there's a part of his book that he wrote in, I believe, the 1980s, where he kind of talks. They found tracks. I think he said, I don't remember exactly what numbers he gave. I think he said like a mile from Laos Camp. Then he said that that's the same area where Jerry Crew had made his cast. So I mean, regardless, it was very close to Laos Camp. That's pretty much the pioneering edge. The pioneering edge of Bluff Creek Road wasn't far past Laos Camp in the summer and fall of '58.
Right.
But it would be cool to isolate it. It would be so great, like the Patterson-Gimlin side, if we could show people, hey, this is exactly where he made his cast, or this is the first place where he saw Bigfoot tracks.
You could count all the roads. You could count all the historical roads coming out of that location on one hand. There's 12 and 13 wasn't there. It was 12 and 10. And then there was that one they used to call the Bluff Creek Road. Used to cross above the Bluff Creek itself, traversing over to Lonesome Ridge. And there was another one that kind of cut up the hill back towards the Lonesome Ridge into the spot.
That one road is the famous site of a
RV. Of a well-known Perez man.
Well-known
RV in.
Daniel
Perez Memorial RV Highway.
Did you ever put that sign out there, Jonathan?
I think I still have it somewhere.
Oh, you gotta.
I didn't have the whatever I needed to put it up.
Just a nail or screw.
The Webos.
Jonathan made this amazing. He made this amazing plaque or sign. Yeah, he's gonna put it up there, and it says, "What does it say?"
It says Daniel Perez Memorial RV Highway.
It's so good.
Signs don't last too long in Bluff Creek.
I know. I figured it only costs like $6 or something like that to make. So we're good.
That's what we're gonna. Go ahead.
Going back to the crew tracks, another good piece of evidence we have is John Green's first book, and I can't remember the name of it now. The one in '68, he actually draws a map of the Bluff Creek watershed, and he identifies where the Jerry Crew tracks were. And I would have to assume that he spoke to those guys and got it, pretty relatively accurate.
I see.
Does anybody have like a second generation copy of the Jerry Crew track? Because I know Steven have it for a while, but he ended up selling it on eBay, which I'm kind of mad for him still at.
Well, okay, here's a story about that. So in 1958, Bob Titmus started, and this is a big part of my book towards the end, is in 1958, Jerry Crew and Bob Titmus made replicas of like fiberglass replicas of Jerry Crew's track. And then later, a few weeks later, when they first cast the double ball track, that was in November of '58, they also made a replica cast of that, and they sold it to tourists for years. So a lot of people, those are probably still out there. I know Betty Allen's family had one of them. I'm sure there's some others, but that was always the controversy when it comes to whether or not Ray Wallace, those double ball tracks were faked or not. When I'm referring to the double ball tracks, it was by far the most prominent type of tracks you saw in Bluff Creek in the 1950s and 1960s. The biggest case was Blue Creek Mountain, where there's literally thousands of double ball tracks. So when Ray Wallace died in 2002, they uncovered a whole trove of these wooden stompers, and they were identical to the double ball tracks. So John Green's argument was, which is a sound one, is he said, no, is a chicken or egg argument. He said that Ray Wallace has simply gotten a copy of one of those replica casts that Titmus and Crew were to create his wooden stomper. So he paid little heed to the claim in 2002 of Ray Wallace being responsible, because mostly he knew what a goofy character that Ray Wallace was.
So the tracks that Crew was finding, those weren't Ray Wallace, and the tracks that Crew did cast wasn't Ray Wallace. Do you think it was it?
No. Well, we should be clear. So the original Bigfoot track, the one that was in the newspaper, that was not a double ball track.
That was an original, like, legit track.
I don't know if it's where the plot thickens. Is also among the trove of wooden stompers that were in Ray Wallace's basement was also a track that is identical to Crew's original track. But you can make the same argument because Bob Titmus and Jerry Crew made replicas of both of those. And I actually have letters from the 1950s where Betty Allen's talking about it, kind of complaining about how much Bob Titmus was charging for these replica casts they were selling to tourists everywhere. So they're all over the place at the time.
Man.
So when I talked to Carl Crew, I interviewed him for a video of mine, and he pulls out this cast, and it's this Jerry Crew one, right? And it looks comical. Like, it looks the same shape and kind of size, and but it's all smoothened up and it looks all rounded like a cartoon almost, Like it doesn't look like what, certainly doesn't look like what Jerry Crew was holding in there, So it's some replica of some sort. And I never put together why Jerry's kind of looks like, if it was the real deal, that's what it would look like. And the other one looks like, something that Ray Wallace did maybe drum up. I could tell a difference. I don't know the origin of that. It was given to him by a family member. It was this replica. So
I'm sure they made casts of several tracks, and they probably made replicas of those. But as I said before, the primary track that I found throughout the classic period was that double ball track. And it's like he's pointing it out up. Robert's pointed out on the screen there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
every time I look at this one, I think of it not being what I would expect a Sasquatch track to look like.
That picture was taken on October 12th, 1958. That's actually Shorty Wallace on the right-hand side. That was Ray's younger brother. So that's a classic double ball track, and that's the exact same tracks that were found in August of 1967 on Blue Creek Mountain.
Yeah, that just looks fake. I always thought.
And I've always said the Blue Creek Mountains look track. And actually, the reason that white is they poured flour in the track to bring out the color for the camera. And actually, an interesting side note, you guys probably read about in the book, that was the same night that the sheriff's deputy actually went up and talked to the Wallaces. That happened later that night was when they saw those tracks.
Oh, wow.
That's one of the famous sighting that occurred by two of the loggers.
I see. Huh.
Yeah, I got an off the wall question for you. I know you're enjoying writing these things. When do we get to see the next book? And when does the screenplay come out?
I'm working on the screenplay for Dustin.
Yeah, I've considered a screenplay. I think it would be better. It's so much too. I feel like it'd be better as like a mini series than like a 2-hour movie. And I think it would be kind of a mixture of the two books, kind of a non-linear form. As far as the second book, though, the plan is going actually pretty well. I think that the second book's probably 70% done. I actually wrote a lot of the second book before I wrote the second book. So I say 70% done, and my goal is I want to release it on October 20th, 2024. Wouldn't that be cool?
That's too long.
Something happened that day. What was it?
I can't remember.
I think it October.
Or did it happen that night?
You said October 20th, right?
You have to read about that.
October 20th. I think 67. I think during that time. Right? Well, there was a day in October 20th that it was named October 20th because it was that day, and it was kind of sunny that day, and then at night it was nighttime. So.
Yeah, it's back in Yakima where the days were just perfect, they roll them. Oh, you guys don't believe that, do you?
I get all into, so I get all at the second book. So like the first book, though, it's largely a narrative story, but I do reserve an area where I really dive into the perennial debate and kind of hit all the high marks.
So
yes, I want to say this before I forget. When Dustin was working on this, he let us get a little peek at a few chapters here and there, and one of the ones, the first one I got to see that he sent out was the one about them getting back with this. They already mailed the film, and they're going to see it on Saturday, the first time. Everybody, was it Saturday or Sunday?
It was Sunday. So they shot it on Friday and went to the paper on Saturday, and Sunday it was screened for the first time at Aldi Atlee's home in Yakima, and that brought Green, DeHenden, and Jim McLaren, a few other people.
Wait.
All viewed at the same time.
So the film was shot on Friday, and when did they go into town to mail it? Or when did Roger and Bob go into town to mail it?
Actually, the film was shot.
Can of worms.
Yeah, so around according to Roger Patterson, the film was shot around 1 p.m. So then after that, it's a long story, but then they traveled to Eureka, where they apparently had it shipped off. The manner in which they had it shipped off is a big mystery, something also I discuss in the book. And then from there, they drove back to Yakima. In the meantime, Al Hodgson got on the phone and told John Green about it, told Renee DeHenden about it. Renee DeHenden was in San Francisco at the time. So the next morning, Renee DeHenen showed up, and Willow Creek went to Al Hodgson, and Jim McLaren, who is still alive and well today, he was there as well. So then Renee DeHenen and Jim McLaren headed up to Yakima to Al DeHatley's home, where they saw the screening of the film for the first time. And John Green also came down from Harrison Hot Springs. And then 4 days later, it was the first public screening, which took place at the University of British Columbia.
It makes me wonder, like, if you could, because you said you know they drove to Eureka to mail the film off, and I think
that makes
more sense.
I mean, you could drive first off, if you put it in the mail, there's no way it was going to be in Yakima the next morning. You would have to put it on an airplane to get it into the Yakima.
That's what I'm saying. If it was that case, because say the timeline was they filmed it and they went into town to mail it, and it was like the first screening was Sunday, that would have to be an overnight thing, and somebody would have to get developed Saturday. You know, that's the whole thing, right?
We're opening up a
getting
big
it developed was
here.
one of the getting it developed was one of the it's kind of what throws a wrench in the whole story. You know, because there was only a few places that developed that Kodachrome film.
Seattle was one of them. Seattle was
one of them,
which was within driving distance of Yakima, but they weren't open on weekends. And of course, you have the theory about, did they go through some
private person?
Yeah,
which happened
porn
often
movies back.
then.
That's true.
Like all the adult films and.
And when they had the screening on October 26th, the press interviewed Patterson and asked him how they got it processed. And I'm paraphrasing, he says, "I can't say because the guy would lose his job."
So it probably was some overnight type.
Do you think Patricia Patterson would know? Do you think Roger ever told her?
Oh, absolutely. She knows. She knows the whole story. I actually went to her house, knocked on her door. She's a very sweet lady. But you use the I word, interview. She's not going to talk to you about that. She's happy to talk to you about anything else. Very, very pleasant, lovely woman. But yeah, she's not going to talk about the film unless your name is Daniel Perez. That guy, he gets to talk to her. He's the only one who has access to her.
So there's no way like she would even off the record say kind of where.
I wish. I think I took the wrong approach. I felt like when I knocked on her door, I should have kind of chit-chatted with her for a while and eased into the Patterson film.
Dustin was like,
aggressive.
Dustin was like, so what about the Patterson film? First off, you know what? Maybe I might have some luck with my last name.
Yeah. That and a snowball in hell.
Yeah, and she's not very, she's only she's probably in her early 80s. She was like 16 young. Or 17 when Roger that married her. It wasn't terribly uncommon back then. I think he was like 27 and she was like 16 or 17.
Oh man.
And she was pregnant. I mean, it was not a shotgun wedding though, because I did the math. And I think she was pregnant after they got married. I was assuming you assume if somebody gets married at 16 or 17, they probably got married. It was what they call a shotgun wedding, but probably that's the case.
Wait, she was pregnant, so they have a son or daughter?
No, the daughters. They had a daughter in 56, I believe. They got married in 56. I think she was born in 50. I probably get the numbers off, but yeah.
I wonder, is she still alive today?
Yes.
Have you spoken to her?
No comment.
Take that. Well, Dustin, the reason I brought it up because reading that, it flowed really well, and it kind of put us right there in the living room waiting to see this film. So I think with your books have a great potential for screenplay quality, and the way you write it out based on every chapter is a different scene. Basically, is I think you've done a nice job with that in keeping it flow and keeping us attended, wanting to have more, and it's a lot of history being fed to me in a nice manner. You're feeding the history with me. You took the broccoli out. You put the ice cream right next to my piece, so I can make a decision. So I like that. You said you were going to do that. I was looking forward to this book. It showed up, and I was real busy, so I had to hurry through things, and then I had to fly to my cousin's place in Louisiana. So I go, I'm taking the book, been reading it in between all the hustle and bustle, and like today, I was just like trying to get through a few more pages, so I could have a better response talking to you about it. But it sounds like I'm farther along than Jonathan is. Hey, Jonathan, what page are you on?
Oh man, I'm at the very beginning of the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, so that's when it really picks up again. So in part two, I cover all the Vanguard and give the all their biographies and stuff. So I kind of have digress from that main storyline, but then it jumps back on in part. It gets really fast, and then part 4, which covers the big year of '67 at Blue Creek Mountain. That's when it really picks up.
Oh, look, I'm on page 229. On page 229 of 400 and counting at the very end, 470 page book, 471 if you count about the author.
Well, I really don't want a long book. I always say it's a director's cut. So, you always have filmmakers who film this 3-hour movie. Of course, the studio said there's no way it's got to be 2 hours, and they later come out with a DVD of the director's cut. Well, I didn't get published due to irreconcilable creative differences. So I said, hell with them. So I'll come out with the director's cut and just leave everything in there. But I was prepared to cut that thing down probably a good 100 pages.
Yeah. Well, at least you got to do it your way, which is nice. I'm going to read from the book. It'll be real quick because this is about the author. Dustin Severs lives in the Southern Oregon, where he works as a city planner. This is his first book.
Period.
That guy sounds lame.
Not a fan of talking about myself. I didn't put a picture up.
What? You didn't put a picture up?
No, you did.
Dustin.
Well, I guess he's not as vain as I am. I had over 200 pictures of me in the book.
That one's 180,000 words. I'm shooting for like 130 for the second book, so it won't be as long. Although it certainly could be. But I think the biographies of covering like Ivan Sanderson and Byrne and Tom Slick, that just took up a lot of pages.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to finishing the reading this, and I know you said October will be the part 2 of this, right? This year.
Yeah, October 20th is that's what I'm shooting for. I think that's reasonable. I think I can make that work.
Well, good. That gives people enough to look forward to.
Awesome.
Yeah, we don't know exactly when this is going to be available of the podcast. Tate, when's this one coming up?
Well, by the time, how do I say this? This will be out this coming weekend.
Nice.
Oh, so it's going to be up pretty quick. Good.
It's a fast turnaround.
We're at 2 hours now. That's a pretty good podcast.
We're recording this. It's Wednesday, December 13th. So a week from today, let's just say Wednesday. So it's a week from today. So next Wednesday, I'll have this out, which would be, I don't even know what day that is. So it'll be now. It'll be now. The people listening to this was recorded a week earlier.
A week earlier, that's right. So Dustin, how long has the book been out? About a month now?
A little over a month. October 28th it came out.
Have you got some really good feedback from your readers yet?
I've gotten some solid feedback. I mean, in terms of its success, I think it's done about as good as could be expected for a self-published book. Like I said, I gave a hard effort to get this thing go through a publisher. Gave it about 4 months. I was actually offered representation by a relatively large literary agency in New York. They just wanted me to just gut the whole book and give it a stupid title, and it's left a really bad taste in my mouth. So for the second book, I'm not even going to attempt to go through a publisher. I'm just going to self-publish again. And I think my third book, that's when I'll try to get my book go through a traditional publisher. Maybe I can see my book in a brick and mortar store.
Good.
The heck? In your third book, we'll talk about the Bluff Creek Project.
I'm retired. I'm retired from Bigfoot after October. I'll still come up there in July, but I'm done.
But your book will talk mainly about me and how a key player I am.
Yes, that's my third book, is about life and times of Tate Hieronymus.
Yeah.
I'll
Except
buy
I'm
it.
gonna spell your last name the same as Bob's.
Jerk. so in closing, I guess, I mean, do you guys, just Jonathan or Robert, do you guys have any last remarks, or Dustin, do you have anything you want to add before we close out tonight?
The book's available on Amazon. Buy it, please.
We will
Spread the word.
I'll put the link in the show notes so everybody
Yeah.
can be able to go and buy that and check it out. So it'd be kind of cool. So, but
Yeah, and I'll say this: you won't be disappointed.
nope. Jonathan, any last
That's
remarks?
No, that's it. Just it's a really good book. It's very entertaining. You're going to learn a lot about history and how Bigfoot originated and the people around it. There's a lot of correlations between people back then and people today, and it's really
Wait, hey, not to put Jonathan on the spot. I know we're closing out. Jonathan, you're good at mimicking people's voices. Would you like to give us a famous Bigfooter phrase or some voice of some kind for you?
You don't have a Dehendon? You don't have a Dehendon?
I don't have a Dehendon.
Twax, talking about Twax, mind-boggling.
Yeah, sponsored by Kokanee beer, right? The only that's so cool. But well, I guess I got my Peter Byrne guy,
Please.
This is Peter Byrne. Until next time, you're listening to the Bluff Creek Project.